Johnny Talk Sports with the Week 3 NFL predictions. Last week, I went an impressive 13-3, and after 2 weeks in the season, I sit with a record of 22-10. And last week, just an absolutely brutal week for injuries all throughout the league. Just so many big names are out for the season or for a significant amount of time. I mean, especially the 49ers. Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas out for the season. George Kittle was already injured. But at least it's possible he could play this week, as well as Jimmy Garoppolo, who left with an ankle injury last week. Raheem Mostert, doubtful for this week. Tevin Coleman, expected to miss multiple weeks. For the Giants, Saquon Barkley, torn ACL out for the season. The Broncos, Cortland Sutton out for the season. Starting quarterback Drew Lock, expected to miss about 6 weeks. Christian McCaffrey, expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. But Christian McCaffrey said that he would try to return as soon as possible, maybe even earlier than 4 to 6 weeks, if it was possible. Le'Veon Bell for the Jets is already out for multiple weeks. Michael Thomas didn't play last week, but the Saints are optimistic he'll be able to play this week. Just an absolutely brutal week for injuries last week. Week 3, there are some good matchups this week, including what I think is the game of the year between the Chiefs and the Ravens. We also have the Cowboys and Seahawks this week. Should be a good matchup. And on Sunday night, we have the Packers taking on the Saints. Now, despite losing last week to the Las Vegas Raiders, I think the Saints are still the favorite to represent the NFC in Tampa for Super Bowl 55. So let's get to the Week 3 NFL predictions. And as always, we begin with the Thursday night game. This week, Thursday Night Football features the Dolphins and the Jaguars. Now, the Dolphins were really close to beating Buffalo last week, while the Jaguars were very close to beating the Titans last week. They were able to put up a significant amount of points against the Titans. So the way I see this matchup, now I know the Jaguars, the last 2 seasons, they had a good September. But then after September, the wheels just have fallen off the Jaguars. And I think we're going to see a repeat of that. I think the Jaguars will win this game. Gardner Minshew does seem to have confidence right now. And many were speculating that the Jaguars, they could possibly be tanking after releasing Leonard Fournette and trading Yannick Ngakoue in the offseason. But I think the Jaguars will win this game. I just don't really know what's going on with the Dolphins right now. If we're going to ever see Tua Tagovailoa this season, or if they're just going to hold out on him until maybe next season, or maybe in the middle of the season, if things with Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't working out. But I do like the Jaguars this week. Now on to the Sunday games. We have the Chicago Bears and Atlanta Falcons. Now an absolutely brutal loss to the Falcons last week, as all they had to do was jump on an onside kick, and they beat the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are 0-2. But 5-6 guys just watching an onside kick. Now the Falcons honestly deserve to lose that game just by doing that. While the Bears are a quiet 2-0 this season, although they've only beaten the Lions and the Giants. And the Giants, it was a very close game. And the Lions, they had to rally from 17 down in the fourth quarter. But the two offenses of the Lions and the Giants are nowhere near comparable to the Atlanta Falcons offense. Now, despite the Falcons being 0-2, they have still managed to put up a significant amount of points on the board throughout the first 2 weeks of the season against the Seahawks and Cowboys. And Matt Ryan is second in the National Football League in passing yards, just a handful of yards behind Josh Allen of the Bills. Now, as good as the defense that everybody says that the Chicago Bears has, while the Falcons' defense is awful, I think that this is going to be a game where the Falcons, they're going to get like an unknown source of confidence. Now, this is probably going to be one of the only maybe 4 or 5 times this season that I'm actually going to pick the Falcons. And I'm going to, based off of the fact that despite the Falcons' defense being awful, I think this offense can put up enough points to win this game against the Bears, forcing the Bears to play from behind. But the Falcons' defense, I think, will make enough stops this week to get the win. So I'm going to take Atlanta. Next, we have the Rams and the Bills, a battle of 2-0 teams. Josh Allen leading the league in passing yards, while the Rams, they dominated against Philadelphia last week, and many say that they should have at least taken the Cowboys to overtime, but they pulled out in regulation. And it appears that I think the Rams are improving. They are showing right now they don't necessarily need Todd Gurley, but I think there could be a point in the season where they may wish that they had him. Although Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson have stepped up so far in the Rams offense, I think there might be issues with the running game somewhere down the line. They may wish they had Todd Gurley still once they get later into the season or into the postseason, if they're able to make it that far. As we have to remember, they are in the same division as the Seahawks, Cardinals, who are both 2-0, and the 49ers. Now, despite the 49ers being really shorthanded, especially on defense, I think the NFC West is still going to be up for grabs the entire season between all 4 of these teams. But I think the Rams will win this week. I just think that the Bills, I think it's going to be a reality check for them, considering they've only played the Jets and the Dolphins, 2 of the bottom 4 teams in the National Football League. Next, we have the football team in Washington taking on the Browns. And the Browns have a few days more extra rest than the football team. The football team suffered an excruciating loss against Kyler Murray, as I anticipated that the football team defense wasn't able to contain Kyler Murray, as that was the biggest key to the game. And I see this being the kind of exact same thing, except for they won't be able to contain the running game of Nick Chubb. Now, Nick Chubb had a big game last week, and Odell Beckham, I think he has some confidence going, especially after those rumors surfaced that the Browns were interested in trading Odell Beckham, putting him on the trade block. I just think the Browns need to take notes, and if they get Odell Beckham the ball, like if they can get him to make plays, just put him in a position where he can make plays, the Browns will be successful. And I think the Browns will win this week. I just think the Washington football team, maybe after that week 1, maybe after seeing last week, maybe the 8 sacks in week 1 was probably just the Eagles missing 3 of their starting 5 offensive linemen. But I will take the Browns. But I want to see some fight in the Washington football team. I think Antonio Gibson, the starting running back for the football team, I think he's got confidence going now, and so is Terry McLaurin, as they both got their first touchdowns of the season last week. I think it's going to be a good matchup. I think it's going to be one of the best ones of the week. Probably only behind the Chiefs and the Ravens, and possibly Packers Saints, or even Cowboys and Seahawks. So probably the 4th best matchup of the week this week. Next, we have the Tennessee Titans and the Minnesota Vikings. For the Titans, I'm kind of still waiting for Derrick Henry to get going a little bit. The Jaguars' defense contained him really well. Meanwhile, the Vikings, they still can't seem to get it going offensively or even defensively. The Vikings, they still have a young secondary to work with, and Kirk Cousins didn't have a good performance last week. Will Kirk Cousins have a much better performance? For the Vikings to win this game, I think they've got to get Adam Thielen going. They got to also get some other receivers going. Among them, rookie Justin Jefferson. I think if you get Justin Jefferson going, you've got to give Justin Jefferson a chance to make plays, because you spent a first-round pick on him. And if they can't get Justin Jefferson going soon, if we can't see him having big games. Now, Justin Jefferson was drafted to fill in the void, to complement Adam Thielen, and to replace Stephon Diggs. And right now it's starting to feel like Laquan Treadwell 2.0. I know it's only the first 2 games. It's only week 3. But I really hope Justin Jefferson gets going soon for the sake of the Vikings offense. And for the Titans, as I said a moment ago, I really am waiting to see Derrick Henry get going. The Vikings, they seem to not do so well with containing Aaron Jones in week 1 and with Jonathan Taylor in the Colts running game last week. So I'm expecting Derrick Henry. I think this could be a game where he really gets going. So I'm going to take the Titans to win this game. We're not really sure if A.J. Brown is going to return this week, as he is dealing with an injury himself. But I will take Tennessee in this game. The last 2 games of the Titans, really close victories. Next, we have who I am going to give out as my team of the week last week, the Las Vegas Raiders, pulling off an upset against the Saints last week against the New England Patriots. Now, the Patriots fought hard against the Seahawks, but ultimately they were just a yard and a half short. And the way I see this, Cam Newton has a chip on his shoulder. In fact, he wants to put some respect on his name. While the Raiders, they're coming off a very emotional victory. And we got to see Darren Waller last week have a phenomenal game against the Saints. Josh Jacobs, he got going a bit. It seemed like the further on the game went against the Saints, the better the Raiders offense got. Because it was a very slow start for this Raiders team. But then once we got to the second quarter, the further on the game went, the better the Raiders were. Now I think this could come down to the wire. This is one of these great matchups that I can't wait to see how it plays out. But I think the Patriots are going to win this week because I feel like the Raiders, that emotional victory, winning the first game in the new stadium, I just think it's going to come down the wire, and I think it's going to be the Patriots because I just feel like the Patriots, they have more what it takes to kind of close out a game with Bill Belichick with his coach experience compared to John Gruden. So I will take the Patriots. Next, we have the 49ers and the Giants. Both of these teams are just decimated with injuries. For the Giants, Saquon Barkley out for the season with an ACL injury. And for the 49ers, Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas out for the season with ACL injuries. Raheem Mostert's doubtful. Tevin Coleman is definitely not going to play. So it looks like Jerick McKinnon and Jeff Wilson are going to carry the load for the 49ers running game this week. The 49ers are optimistic, though, that Jimmy Garoppolo, the starting quarterback, will play this week, as well as starting tight end George Kittle. And the 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan said that he is concerned about this game playing in the Giants stadium. But the way I see this, I think it's going to be one of these games. It's going to be surprisingly low scoring and surprisingly close. Due to the 49ers being short-staffed on both sides of the ball right now, mostly just on defense. But I could see the offense still making plays, especially if Jimmy Garoppolo is able to play this week, along with George Kittle. And for the Giants, I'd say they're going to still struggle offensively. The offensive line really is abysmal so far. And the Giants, they are, however, expected to sign Devonta Freeman. In fact, they are waiting for the signing to be official once he passes the COVID-19 protocols. So we'll see Devonta Freeman as the starting running back for the Giants. Maybe not this week, but we'll see. Maybe a couple of weeks from now, definitely. But I will take the 49ers in this game. I just think that despite them being shorthanded on defense, I think the offense will be able to make enough plays to win this game. So I will take the 49ers. Next, we have a surprising battle of 0-2 teams. We've got the Bengals and the Eagles. The Eagles just completely got outmanned last week against the Rams. And for the Bengals, they are getting closer and closer to getting that first win of the season and that first win of Joe Burrow's career as a starting quarterback. And this is going to be a matchup where I don't know who to pick in this one either. The Bengals, they seem to have a little bit of confidence going. They're getting close. And the Eagles, well, who really knows what their starting lineup is going to look like with their offensive line? And their secondary didn't look so well either. Well, the defense as a whole didn't look well either against the Rams. But I will take the Eagles this week to get their first win of the season. Joe Burrow's first career win as an NFL quarterback is coming soon, but I just don't think it's going to be this week. I'm going to take Philadelphia. I just think that Carson Wentz is going to have a game where it's going to be a lights-out type of performance. Hopefully, it's the Eagles play a game this week with Carson Wentz that looks like the first half of week 1 instead of the second half. Because ever since the second half of week 1, things are just going from bad to worse for the Eagles. And I feel like this is a must-win for the Eagles, or else you can put a fork in their season already, and it's only going to be week 3. So I think if the Eagles start off 0-3, despite being in a division with the Cowboys and the Washington football team and the Giants, I feel like they can't afford to start 0-3. Especially even with the expanded NFL playoffs, I just can't see them making it to the playoffs if they start 0-3. Putting them in a hole like that's going to be very difficult. But I think the Eagles will get their win this week, so they don't have to worry about it. Next, we have the Houston Texans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Man, for the Texans, I don't think you could have asked for a more brutal start to the season. Playing the Chiefs opening night, then playing the Ravens in week 2, having to face off against the last 2 NFL MVPs for the first 2 weeks of the season, and you're facing off against a very confident Ben Roethlisberger in week 3. Things just keep going bad to worse for the Texans. Unfortunately, this scheduling so far this season has not worked out in the Texans' favor. Now, as much as I think this game is going to be close, I just don't know if the Texans are going to be able to keep it close based off of what we've seen from the Texans defensively. Although you do got to give the Texans a little bit of credit because they did a decent job containing Lamar Jackson, but unfortunately, it wasn't decent enough. And for the Steelers, 2-0 start, return of Ben Roethlisberger, I think that's confidence for the Steelers moving forward, and I like them to win this week to go 3-0 on the season. Next, we have the New York Jets and the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts, they got their first win of the season last week against the Vikings. For the Jets, well, the Jets are just being the Jets. Frank Gore is the running back right now. Sam Darnold still isn't making really many plays. Adam Gase is probably on the hot seat at this point. I just think there's really nothing else. Although I am waiting to see if T.Y. Hilton can really get going in this Colts offense. I anticipated that T.Y. Hilton would be having a good season with a veteran quarterback like Phillip Rivers throwing him the football. But unfortunately, really not much action from T.Y. Hilton so far this season. Maybe against a depleted Jets team, maybe he can get going this week. Maybe Phillip Rivers can get going this week. And I will take the Colts to win this one in probably what I think is the most easily predicted game of the week. I anticipate about 99% of people picking the Colts to win this matchup. Next, we have the 0-2 Panthers taking on the 1-1 Chargers. Now, what stuck out to me last week with the Chargers, Justin Herbert, the rookie quarterback out of Oregon. Man, Justin Herbert, he was really close to leading the Chargers' victory over the Chiefs. I would say if the Chargers would have gone for it in overtime on a 4th and 1, that they convert that, and they could have easily marched down the field and scored a touchdown. Because I don't get why they didn't just go for it. They had nothing to lose at that point. You pretty much knew, I mean, at least most of us knew, that as soon as the Chiefs touched the ball in overtime, it was game over. whether it was going to be a touchdown or a field goal. It was just only a matter of what was it going to be? Was it going to be from like the 30-something yard line, or was it going to be from about the other 25, 30 yard line? I just didn't like the decision at all. I think you have a running back like Austin Eckler who could have gotten you that 1 yard. And what also kind of is something that's sticking out to me as well, based off of Anthony Lynn's comments about Justin Herbert's performance, when asked if this could be, well, pretty much about Justin Herbert, he said that Justin Herbert is a backup for a reason. I feel like that's kind of insulting to say about your first round draft pick, and it's probably only a matter of time until Justin Herbert's the starter. But Justin Herbert has done better this season, just one game, in his one game, than Tyrod Taylor did in his. And Tyrod Taylor's was against the worst team in the league last year. Meanwhile, Justin Herbert's one game was against the defending Super Bowl champions. So I almost wanted to pick the Panthers in this game based off the sole fact that Justin Herbert wasn't the starting quarterback this week, and they're moving back to Tyrod Taylor as QB1. But then I remembered that the Panthers' best player, Christian McCaffrey, is on the sideline for at least the next 4 to 6 weeks. But then I thought, okay, this is going to be one of those games where I just have to pick somebody. It's probably going to be one of those games where it's going to be like probably 13-10 as the final score. And I just happen to pick the Chargers in this. I mean, I'm picking the Chargers because the Panthers' running defense against the run gave up 2 touchdowns to Leonard Fournette last week. And I think Austin Eckler is going to have a really good game this week against this Panthers defense. Next, we have the Buccaneers and the Broncos. The Broncos, they may be without Drew Lock for the next 6 weeks and without their best wide receiver in Courtland Sutton for the rest of the season. But the Broncos defense, they have showed some heart in these first 2 weeks of the season. They have kept the Broncos in the game from start to finish both weeks. But unfortunately, I'm not sure if they're able to keep the Broncos in the game from start to finish against the Tom Brady-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Because I said last week, despite the loss to New Orleans, I think that one loss in week 1 doesn't define what the Buccaneers are as a team and who they are as a team. I anticipated that it probably was going to take about a game and a half to really get Tom Brady used to the system in Tampa Bay. And they showed last week that Tom Brady really hasn't skipped a beat. And I'm going to pick Tampa Bay in this game based off that I think that now Tom Brady, I think now that he's in the system with Tampa Bay, has a couple games experience, I think it's going to be firing on all cylinders for the Buccaneers. Now, even though the Broncos, they have the altitude as their secret weapon, a lot of the Buccaneers players, they do have some experience with altitude, including Tom Brady, who's played at Mile High Stadium plenty of times. So I will take Tampa Bay in this one, although I want to see if Denver is going to be able to keep the Denver defense, if they'll be able to stay in the game from start to finish, keep the Broncos offense in it, as the Broncos, they have signed Blake Bortles with Drew Lock missing the next 6 weeks. But we'll see if Blake Bortles is going to be the starting quarterback anytime soon for the Broncos, or if they're going to stick with Jeff Driscoll. Next, we have the Lions and the Cardinals. For the Lions, an 0-2 start, but they did show some early promise against the Packers last week. While the Cardinals, they are 2-0, led by Kyler Murray, quarterback. DeAndre Hopkins finally got in the end zone for the Cardinals last week. DeAndre Hopkins, really the secret weapon to the Cardinals offense. And despite Kenny Golladay possibly coming back for the Lions this week, I just can't see the Lions beating the Cardinals. I think it's really hard to pick against the Cardinals right now based off of what they've done throughout the first 2 weeks of the season, Kyler Murray looks like a candidate for MVP. In fact, I would say Kyler Murray is probably third on the MVP list behind Russell Wilson and possibly even Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen's looked so good the first 2 weeks of the season. We'll see how good Josh Allen can be moving forward. So I'd say Kyler Murray probably third, at the least probably fourth in MVP voting right now. With Lamar Jackson, I think Lamar Jackson, maybe if they can beat the Chiefs this week, he can go to number one, be the favorite. Pat Mahomes really didn't look his best to the beginning of the game, and the Chiefs special teams, led by Harrison Butker as the kicker, ultimately led the Chiefs to victory last week. But I will pick the Cardinals in this game. I really want to see Matthew Stafford have a good season. But unfortunately, I think it's really hard when you're running into a team that's hot like the Arizona Cardinals. Next, we have the Cowboys and the Seahawks. The Cowboys pulled off an unbelievable comeback against the Falcons, even though I'm not really giving the Cowboys credit for the win. I think the bigger headline is the Falcons blew a 20-point lead again. While the Seahawks are led by quarterback Russell Wilson, who I think is the favorite to win MVP right now. In fact, I believe he only has 9 incompletions this season after 2 weeks, compared to 10 touchdown passes. And I think that this is going to be one of those things where the Cowboys, they lost the first game of the season. Then they won one, then they lose one, then they win one. The Cowboys are either going to go 8-8 this year, or they're going to go 12-4, 13-3, and find themselves as the 1 seed in the playoffs of the NFC. I think this week against the Seahawks is going to be a huge turning point for the Cowboys season. Even though it's only week 3, I already think this. Because this looks kind of similar in seasons past. Because the Cowboys, they did once beat the Seahawks in the 12th man, and it ultimately was, I think, a turning point of their season. This is either going to be a turning point in the season in a positive way or a negative way. And I think it's going to be a negative way. Despite Dak Prescott leading a comeback last week, I think that was just luck and the Falcons hands team really being, I'd say, kind of being negligent. I would say the Seahawks are going to win this week. I think it's just hard to pick against Russell Wilson right now based off what he's done the first 2 games of the season. Though I do think this game will come down to the wire. I think Russell Wilson will make plays down the stretch like he has in the first 2 weeks of the season. Next, we have the Sunday Night Football game between the Packers and the Saints. The Packers 2-0 this season, although they have beaten the winless Lions and the winless Vikings for the first 2 weeks of the season. Meanwhile, the Saints, they lost last week to the Las Vegas Raiders, but without Michael Thomas. Now, in both of these games, for both these teams in this game, both number 1 wide receivers are questionable to play in this game. Although for Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams, I would lean towards both of these guys playing this week. And it's going to be an awesome battle between Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. I think this is going to be, this would be the game of the week if it weren't for what I think is the game of the year that we're going to talk about next between the Chiefs and the Ravens. But I'm going to pick the Packers in this one. I just think the Saints are going to come out a little sluggish in this game, especially after getting embarrassed by the Vegas Raiders last week in Monday Night Football. But I want to see how the Saints are going to respond. I know the Saints defense, despite not playing well in the last 3 quarters against the Raiders, I think the Saints still have a really good defense. But I do think this will be an offensive battle. And I think Aaron Rodgers will make the plays down the stretch in the 4th quarter. While the Packers defense, I think the Packers defense is the most underrated defense in the league. Because they have made adjustments in the drafts before the last one. And I think the Packers are going to win this game in a high-scoring battle. I'm going to say 38-35. And finally, we have what I think is going to be the game of the season between the Chiefs and the Ravens. A battle between the last two NFL MVPs in Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Unfortunately, though, for the Ravens, the Chiefs are Lamar Jackson's kryptonite. On the other hand, though, the Ravens did get Calais Campbell in the offseason. And I think the Ravens defense, I think it's a much better defense than it was last year when they played against the Chiefs in the regular season. With the Ravens defense be a little bit better, I think the Chiefs offense got a little bit better with the draft pick of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think that this is going to be a huge chemistry game between Clyde Edwards-Helaire and that Chiefs offense. Despite underperforming last week, I think we saw some plays towards the end of the game in overtime where Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he stepped up in the passing game for the Chiefs. And I think the chemistry is starting to get there between Clyde Edwards-Helaire and the Chiefs offense. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs in this game. I think it's going to be a big one from start to finish, and I'm looking forward to it. I think that this game goes in either direction. The third time could be the charm for Lamar Jackson to finally beat the Chiefs, but I just think that the Chiefs are Lamar Jackson's kryptonite, and I will pick the Kansas City Chiefs to win what I think is the game of the season. So those are my picks this week. For review, I like the Jaguars, Falcons, Rams, Browns, Titans, Patriots, 49ers, Eagles, Steelers, Colts, Chargers, Buccaneers, Cardinals, Seahawks, Packers, and Chiefs this week. Comment your picks down below, and I will talk to you next time.